All right, everybody, welcome to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Mike Catalano along with Dan Fates and Jenna Cottrell up in Orchard Park. Jenna, it's been a while since we've been able to be up there for anything. Well, what was it like? I know it's just rookie camp, but what was it like today?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was a beautiful weather day, but all the rookies out on the field, it is still COVID in terms of there are the COVID protocols. There was, mask wearing. We were socially distanced. But just seeing the players out on the field, the rookies in particular, they were a spirited group. They were all kind of getting to know one another. You could see some of the guys high-fiving, shaking hands, meeting one another. It was cool to see that. The energy was good. It was the first time we've really gotten to see Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, Brian Dable out there. Sean McDermott had his enormous safari hat going on. So it felt like old times, but obviously the new players. So it was good to see. And again, out on the field, those guys kind of getting into it. So, football is back here in Orchard Park.
Yeah. In terms of the group and the amount of people out there, I've seen some teams very limited based on other COVID circumstances. Could you get a sense of how many rookies are on the field and what we're looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good amount, obviously, as well, because there are the rookies, there are the undrafted free agents, as well as the draft class. And then there were some guys on a tryout as well, a couple players, including a quarterback trying out. But yeah, there's probably about, 40 guys, I would say, if not a little bit more. They obviously had them split up in terms of defense and offense, both sides of the ball. But no, the biggest thing that kind of was my takeaway was just seeing the size and how tall some of these guys really are. I mean, Gregory Rousseau, Spencer Brown, Carlos Basham, like these players are big guys, especially next to some of the coaching staff. It was pretty interesting to see, but that height really jumps out at you considering, these guys are enormous. They could be a starting five. If it was the Buffalo Braves days, I think they would have their work cut out for them.
Well, I think that was that was what I was going to ask you is that, we've seen these guys just at podiums or pictures or on Zooms. And I don't know if you've heard this, Jenna, but 3 of them were on a plane together and they all had to travel in. So I was curious as to see, is that size more noticeable? You've been to so many Bills practices. You've seen enough games. You've been around offensive lines before.
Yeah.
At practices. That was more noticeable at 6'8", 6'7"?
Yeah, it was funny because I was curious how much of an impact that would really make because we've seen enormous guys in Buffalo before, like Richie Incognito in terms of O-lineman. I think of as like that dude's a mountain. But it was funny at one point during kind of the workouts, they were working with, some of the dummies, especially the defensive linemen. And Gregory Rousseau knocked the dummy over. And then when he was putting it back up, it was like it came up to like his belly button. I was like, that is crazy to see that. It was just so funny because he's such a big guy. I mean, he obviously makes up so much ground so quick. He's so fast. But yeah, you can just tell that there is that added size element. Now, the offensive linemen were working pretty far away. But so we really got to see most of the defensive line up close. But yeah, that size is surprising. Even though it's coming, you're like, wow, they're a very tall group, and that definitely is something when you see them on the field. Even on a football field, they still that size stands out.
Well, 6'8" to 6'8". By the way, in case anybody's wondering, Jenna's not making an educational comment on anybody. Dummies, she is talking about the inanimate object that is on the field. She's not talking about another player. Yes, exactly. I'm curious about this. The players are excited. They're excited to see the facilities and all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But an issue has been COVID and the vaccines. Has it come up in any of these calls? Yeah. Because, there was the Cole Beasley thing yesterday where he got into it a little bit with the fans and then just quickly parachuted off of Twitter. But in terms of, Brandon Beane did have that comment earlier this year, and then the league stepped in about, he'd cut a player if it meant getting them past the protocols. Has it come up at all with these rookies in any of the calls?
I think it was asked to Gregory Rousseau about, if he had a comment or if, he had any input, because he opted out of last season at Miami because his mother was a COVID nurse. So he kind of had the firsthand impact of, what was going on. But he even said, he was like, these guys are rookies. So I think a lot of times, their goal is to just stay under the radar and work and, be a rookie and not be the loudest guy in the room. So, he was saying the fact that, it's people's personal decisions. But we talked about this before yesterday. Like, that is something that is huge in terms of keeping a locker room together. It's so important to make sure that all the guys are on the same page. They're getting along. Like, this is once again another added element of, can you keep a locker room all on the same page and not kind of have that fracturing within. So it's going to be something to watch with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, how they do address that, because it's still 2021 and we're still having these conversations. So that's a part of it as well.
Yeah. And in case anybody's not familiar, the league policy is players do not have to be vaccinated, but teams are incentivized by the percentage of players they have who've had the vaccine. And it will lessen some of the restrictions. It'll make life within the building a little easier. And you do wonder if at any point that could become an issue. I would say this. You're right about the rookies being quiet about everybody's opinion. But in terms of making a team, I don't think it benefits you to not be vaccinated.
Right.
Even though it's unsaid.
But I also think Brandon Beane's comments were taken not necessarily out of context, but I think they were blown out. I don't think he's talking about cutting Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs.
Right.
We're talking about guys that are on the cusp, that are on that 53, 54, 55. Right, Jenna. We're talking razor thin where everything is nitpicked at that point. So, and again, it would be an advantage to have more players vaccinated, to have the lesser protocols, to have more in-person meetings and all of those things. So I think there is something to that. And Jenna, it's funny because you talk about some of the guys not wanting to ruffle too many feathers, I think, with these introductory Zooms. And we heard a lot today of what have you learned? And the buzzword is learn to be a pro, learning to be a pro, getting used to it. But one guy also said, maybe the one that turned my head the most was Rashad Wildgoose and his comment about where he wants to end up, Jenna, I thought was the most interesting.
Yeah. Well, because I asked him, obviously after getting drafted, these guys know they're going to become, pro football players, but this is the first time they're coming out on the field in the pads. It's a practice. So I asked, what does that moment feel like? And Rashad Wildgoose is like, I want to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Like, this is really cool and I'm really excited. Like, I want a long career ahead of me of greatness. And so this is just the first step. And I love the composure. The confidence is obviously jumps off the page as well. But I think that adds the maturity aspect of, like, these guys, while they are very excited and really appreciative, that's the word you hear so much. It's so grateful for the opportunity. But these guys know that, this is just the start. You have to prove yourself every day. On the sidelines of the practice facility is still the sign up that says find a way. This team has a lot that they need to do to get back to where they were. And so they know that, even with these rookies, they know that it's a grind, but they know that, the moment has only just started.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that, that's his ultimate goal, and that's fine. He could go ahead and say that. Everybody realizes first goal is to, make the team and then play. But I want to see the bust in Canton where they're putting Wildgoose on the bus. Now that'll be cool, right? So at some point,
it's a good name.
It is a good name.
Great
and
name.
His nickname is
Goose.
Yeah.
Goose.
It makes sense. Mike and Jenna, we both were talking about, I think this mini camp is going to be very telling to see some competition because we don't know how many reps these guys may get during the season if they were to make the team. We've talked about, they drafted all these offensive linemen, the three that we talked about with Tommy Doyle and Spencer Brown and Jack Anderson. And I was just on the Zoom call with Jack Anderson, and he said that he graduated from high school early to get to Texas Tech early and was pretty much named the starter at right guard before the first practice. Like, he walked in, showed up on campus, and they're like, you're the starting right guard. And he's like, it is completely different now. Like, he's like, I now have to be versatile. He talked about how he has to learn all those inside positions because, as we've talked about through these draft picks and through this offseason, Jenna, this roster is so deep and is bringing back so many starters that every rep and every chance that these rookies get this weekend is going to be huge because who knows how many more they're going to get when it gets to be training camp and OTAs and the season, right?
Yeah.
I think one other
absolutely.
thing.
And that was the thing too.
Yeah.
Is this is a huge teaching moment as well.
Yes.
I think that's something to harp on. Is like, well, these coaches, the position coaches, are going over stuff. They did some like light installing. A lot of it was like, here's what we want to see out of you. Here is what we expect out of you. So when you hear that phrase of like learning to become a pro, I think this was the first indoctrination into that. But yeah, this is huge because there's also, it's only rookies here, so you can make mistakes. Whereas with the veterans on the field, that is not going to be the case.
I think another interesting point of this, they're already a step ahead of the rookies last year, right? Because they get on the field because last year was such a disaster. Go back 2 years ago, though, and the rookies are all out there, and then you got OTAs and mini camps and regular training camp. I'm wondering the position these guys are going to get put in. We don't know how the Bills players are going to react to the optional, to the voluntary things. And, a veteran player, come on. I mean, the veteran players, Jerry Hughes does not need the extra work on the field. I mean, maybe he wants to work out, whatever he decides to do. But these guys do, and then it's an oddity. They haven't been in the league. Some will just sign contracts. And that's a whole nother step is to, if the union is pushing players to stay away, what do, Dan? Do they go, hey, I'll love the union, but I need to show my face?
And that's exactly it. We talked about how you want to keep the locker room together. What is this consensus in the locker room? What is your coaches telling you? Because like you talked about it, that there was a guy for the Denver Broncos is training on his own, not at the team facility, blows his knee out or Achilles and he may be out $10 million. So this is kind of brewing. And again, this rookie camp is all fine and good. It's like, we're just rookies here. And then all of a sudden, then you get to meet the players. And then all of a sudden your locker isn't next to another newbie. It's next to a veteran that's been around, that has won, that played in the AFC Championship game last year. And all of a sudden it's, to line up and get behind the lead duck and kind of march in order.
Wild goose behind the duck. It could also be this circumstance too, where, look, if you're one of these guys, a late draft pick or an undrafted free agent, I think you take your chances of saying, I got to be there, and you get a little more face time. Now, I'm not saying that, that puts you ahead of some veteran, but I do think that part is going to be kind of interesting. I will say this, with the room that the Bills have, I think these are pretty mature guys. I think they realize the difference in a Mitch Morris not coming to minicamp is very different, or an optional camp is very different than a 5th round draft pick or an undrafted guy. I mean, they do realize, I think it is a mature room, and I think it's a good room. And I don't think those players will feel pressure from the veterans. That's just my opinion. I don't think that's going to be the message from the veteran players.
Yeah.
If it happens, and it could happen. I think we're going to see around the league, some teams have made statements like the veterans aren't going to come. They're not going to come to the mini camps, but it'd be pretty good. So anyhow, so it was good.
I got to wrap up here because there's about to be the crew coming through, but yeah, we are.
Who's chasing? They're chasing you out.
Well, there's about to be the crew, they have like the yards, the maintenance. Yeah, it's just better if I get out of the way.
You got a nice day up there. All right, good. Well, we're glad Jenna was up there. We're glad you got an opportunity. It's just the rookie camp, but at least it's football back again. And keep in mind, obviously, plenty of content, interviews with the rookies, whatever the Bills do, you can check it out on the Buffalo Plus YouTube page and buffaloplus.com. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. And we appreciate everybody who's been there already. For Dan Fates and for Jenna Cottrell up in Orchard Park, I'm Mike Catalana. Thanks for watching. We'll check you out the next time on the Buffalo Plus YouTube page.